Hi, and welcome to the Texas Division of Emergency Management's Applicant Briefing, Part 2. In Part 1 of this series, you learned about the public assistance application process, the building blocks of eligibility, including the applicant, facility, work, and categories of work, as well as cost. In this presentation, you'll learn about the proper procurement, small and large projects, deadlines, alternate and improved projects, special considerations, and documentation. During Part 1 of this presentation, you learned that costs must be reasonable. One way to help ensure cost reasonableness is through proper procurement. Let's take a moment to discuss the different types of procurement as well as the different types of contracts. The four methods of acceptable procurement are small purchase procedures, sealed bids, competitive proposals, and non-competitive proposals. Small purchase procedures are informal methods for securing services or supplies that don't cost more than preset thresholds by obtaining several price quotes from different sources. While FEMA allows this method for anticipated costs less than $100,000, the state of Texas maintains its own threshold for this type of solicitation. Check with your TDM representative for more information regarding the state's threshold. Sealed bids are formal methods wherein bids are publicly advertised and solicited, and the contract is awarded to the responsive bidder whose proposal is the lowest in price. This method is the preferred method for procuring construction contracts. Competitive proposals are methods similar to sealed bid procurements, in which contracts are awarded on the basis of contractor qualifications instead of on price. This method is used for procuring architectural or engineering professional services. Non-competitive proposals, or sole source procurement procedures, are methods whereby a proposal is received from only one source because the item is available only from a single source, there's an emergency requirement that will not permit delay, FEMA authorizes a non-competitive proposal, or solicitation has been attempted and the competition is inadequate. If one of these conditions exists, FEMA may find this method acceptable. Otherwise, non-competitive proposals and piggyback contracts are generally considered ineligible. Applicants using a non-competitive proposal should be prepared to submit a strong written justification and authorization describing why it was necessary to use this method. When using any of these methods, but particularly the non-competitive proposal method, applicants should keep careful records of their procurement procedures. FEMA provides reimbursement for three types of contracts. A lump sum contract is a contract for work within a prescribed boundary with a clearly defined scope and a total price. All materials and labor are included, and it is up to the contractor to manage his or her costs and deliver a finished product for that price. A unit price contract is one for work done on an item-by-item basis, with cost determined per unit. A price charged per meal for meals served in a shelter is an example of a unit price contract. A cost plus fixed fee contract is either a lump sum or a unit price contract with a fixed contractor fee added into the price. Time and material contracts are contracts where the buyer or applicant agrees to pay the contractor for all the labor and material costs incurred. Time and material contracts should be avoided, but may be allowed for work that is necessary immediately after the disaster has occurred, such as debris removal to allow for the passage of emergency vehicles. Work paid for in this way should not exceed 70 hours. Applicants must carefully monitor contractor expenses, and a cost ceiling or not to exceed provision must be included in the contract. FEMA can provide guidance on procurement issues. However, FEMA does not approve or disapprove contracts. Project worksheets, or PWs, are classified in several different ways. We have learned that PWs are organized by category or type of work involved. PWs are also classified by dollar value. Projects are either large or small, depending on whether or not the dollar value is greater than or less than the small project threshold, which is updated annually and is based on the Consumer Price Index. Different funding guidelines are used based on this classification. If the estimated cost of a project is less than the threshold, the project is processed as a small project. The federal cost share is obligated and paid upon the project's approval. Funding for small projects is based on the initial cost estimates, not completion. The advantage of the small project is that the processing of the grant is expedited. If a project is greater than or equal to the threshold, the project is processed as a large project. Large projects are funded using a final accounting of actual costs. However, TDM may be able to provide progress or advance payments based on submitted documentation from the applicant. In addition to category and size, there are other distinctions that can be made regarding a project. Projects are also sometimes labeled as alternate or improved projects. Occasionally, an applicant may determine that the public welfare would be best served by not using the FEMA funds to restore a damaged facility or to restore the original function of the facility. This usually occurs when the service provided by the facility is no longer needed, although the facility was still in use at the time of the disaster. Under these circumstances, the applicant may apply to use the eligible funds for an alternate project. An example of an alternate project would be a library that was in use at the time of the disaster and then destroyed by the disaster event. If a new facility had already been built prior to the event, it might not make sense to reconstruct the old library. Perhaps the funds intended for the old library would be better used towards a community center. The construction of the community center would be an alternate project. All requests for alternate projects must be made within 12 months of the kickoff meeting and approved by FEMA prior to construction. Applicants performing restoration work on a damaged facility may use the opportunity to make additional improvements while still restoring the facility to its pre-disaster function and capacity. For example, an applicant might propose replacing a firehouse that originally had 2 bays with one that has 3. Projects that incorporate such improvements are called improved projects. An environmental review is required before the project is started. TDM and FEMA must approve the improved project before construction begins. It's important to consult the PA Guide and PA Digest as well as TDM for information and guidance regarding alternate and improved projects. Certain deadlines, limitations, and requirements apply. Think you're ready to formulate a project worksheet? Before you begin, take a moment to review the following special considerations. Special considerations are issues other than program eligibility that could affect the scope of work and funding of a project. These include insurance, floodplain management, hazard mitigation, environmental protection, and historic preservation and cultural resources. If not thoroughly evaluated, any of these considerations could lead to adverse circumstances. The applicant may experience a loss of funding, delays in project, legal action, negative publicity, or the loss of opportunity, such as hazard mitigation. Regarding insurance, the applicant should be aware that actual or anticipated insurance proceeds will be deducted from the eligible project cost for facilities that are insured. The applicant is required to obtain and maintain insurance coverage on all insurable facilities as a condition of PA funding. Deductions will also be made for flood-damaged facilities located within a special flood hazard area if the facility did not carry flood insurance at the time of the disaster. Hazard mitigation is the opportunity for applicants to take steps to lessen the impacts or damages on facilities for future events or disasters. For instance, if a bridge was damaged in the disaster due to floodwaters, consider increasing the flow of the water below the bridge. This can be done by various engineering methods that meet a cost versus benefit analysis. What happens if the applicant doesn't agree with the decision made by FEMA? The appeals process is the opportunity for applicants to request reconsideration of decisions regarding the provision of assistance. There are 2 levels of appeal. The first level of appeal is to the FEMA Regional Administrator. The second level of appeal is to the Assistant Administrator at FEMA headquarters. Both appeals must be submitted to TDM to forward to FEMA Region 6 within 60 days of receipt of notice of the action or decision which is being appealed. You can read more about the appeals process in the Code of Federal Regulations at 44 CFR Section 206.206 or in the PA Guide. When applying for public assistance, applicants must be aware of the various time limits and completion deadlines associated with PA grants. We'll go over a few here. Applicants must submit a request for public assistance to the TDM within 30 days of the designation of the declared disaster area. The FEMA Regional Administrator may extend the time limitation for submitting an RPA for identifying and reporting damage to FEMA in certain circumstances. Regarding the completion of work, emergency work must be completed within 6 months of the designation of the disaster area. Permanent work must be completed within 18 months of the designation. TDM may extend these completion deadlines to a certain extent based on extenuating circumstances. However, requests for extensions beyond the state's authority must be granted by the FEMA Regional Administrator. Additional deadlines may apply. Throughout the development of PWs, always be aware of the upcoming deadlines. Deadlines and time limits are a necessary tool designed to accelerate the recovery from a disaster event. The last topic we'll cover is one that you won't find in the PA Guide or PA Digest: documentation. Proper documentation is the key to creating a successful PW. When applicants maintain accurate records, TDM and FEMA can more easily ascertain what items are eligible for reimbursement, thus ensuring that the applicant receives all applicable funding. Documentation should answer who, what, when, where, why, and how much. Applicants should keep track of the following records: force account labor, include copies of timesheets. Force account equipment, include supporting documentation such as equipment logs. Rented equipment, include rental agreements and copies of invoices. Material and purchases, retain receipts of purchased items as well as items drawn from stock. Applicants should take and retain photographs of existing facilities. Following a disaster, applicants should photograph damage, work underway, and work completed. Photographs should be labeled or cataloged in such a way that someone unfamiliar with the project will be able to easily identify the subject of the picture. Records of donated goods and services should also be retained and filed. When managing contract services, the applicant should keep documentation concerning the procurement process. This should include how and why a particular contractor was selected, as well as copies of contracts and invoices. In addition, primary contractors must be able to provide the applicant with copies of contractors' timesheets and equipment records. When supplying information to TDM and to FEMA, always keep a clear copy of the information in the applicant file. Never give away your last copy of any document. Documents provided to TDM and to FEMA become the property of these agencies. Thank you for taking the time to view this important information. Potential applicants will still be required to attend a live applicant briefing. This will allow TDM to provide information specific to the event as well as critical points of contact. By working together and using the available resources, we can help one another to expedite the recovery of the state of Texas from this event.